Welcome to episode number 4 of my makeup collection series. I've actually taken the insert out of the Alexa drawer and I can't believe it didn't occur to me earlier to do that because it's so much more difficult to show you swatches and get the products out if I'm just sitting next to my Alexa drawer. Not to mention that I'm really far away from the charger of the battery of my camera in case I need to charge it, which I will have to do in a little bit. So this is so much smarter. I don't know why I didn't figure that out earlier. Anyway, we're starting to do this smarter as of today, so I've taken just the whole insert out and we are going to talk about my blush collection today, as promised in my previous video where we talked about bronzers and highlighters. Okay, so here are the 4 blush type palettes that I currently have in my collection. I don't really consider myself to be a face palette person, so I like to think that these are very curated purchases and ones that I'm going to get a lot of use out of. So let's just quickly talk about them. Let's get the biggest one out of the way, which is the Bridgerton 2 Wheel from Pat McGrath Labs. And the blushes that come with this specific release from Pat McGrath Labs are also in a formula that she hasn't really released since. This was the only one time that she has released like an actual just baked, not baked gelée, just baked blushes. And you have the beautiful berry shade, a pink, a nice peachy gold, and a highlighter. I do not like the highlighter. I don't know whether something is specifically wrong with mine. I don't actually think so, because I bought one of these for my mom-in-law, and I want to say her highlighter behaves very similarly. I don't know, it's just very glittery and powdery, and if I put it on my face I just see glitter. Like when I was putting it on my mom-in-law the other day, it also really seemed like glitter. I think this is perfect if you want to apply it as like a body highlighter, and perhaps that is what I should repurpose it for. Like in the summer, just use it as a little like body sparkle moment, but not really as a face highlighter. I don't like it as a face highlighter. The 3 blushes on the other hand are absolutely beautiful. I love them and I do use them all the time. So these are lovely. Oops. These are lovely, as you can see, gorgeous baked formula, nothing really more to say about them. And on a real quick note, I actually don't hate the packaging as much as other people do, because I just keep it right here on my vanity. But that's a part we're going to get to later on when I show you my actual like desk where I do my makeup and we cover brushes and like other random things that are on my desk. But yeah, I keep the Bridgerton 2 palette on display and I think it is meant to be kept that way, so by me it's all fine. Okay, then I have this beautifying palette from Charlotte Tilbury, which comes in the most gorgeous baked gelée formula. I love this palette. I travel with this palette all the time. I never really show it on my channel because I travel with it so much that I get a lot of views out of it when I'm away from home, but then when I'm home I rarely really think about it. The only flaw of this palette is that it doesn't have a bronzer in this formula. Other than that, it is an absolutely beautiful palette. There are 2 matte blushes. And you know, matte is a strong word to use with this formula because this formula always has a little bit of a sheen to it. So there's really no such thing as a pure matte, but they are so gorgeous. I absolutely love them. I love the 3 blushes, I love the highlighter, I like mixing and matching them, and I just love traveling with that thing. It is a little bit heavier, but I do think the packaging is absolutely beautiful, and I think this is a very like foolproof palette. You cannot go wrong with a formula like this. Love these. I have another palette here from Pat which houses her traditional highlighter, blush and bronzer formula. This is in the shade Nirvana in Bloom, and the reason I purchased this little trio is because I do not have this shade of bronzer. I really wanted to have this shade of blush, and I thought if this doesn't work out for me as a highlighter, which it doesn't, I can always use it as a topper or, you know, as a highlighter when I'm very tan. This is the shade Celestial, no, this is the shade Bronze Nirvana. The blush is actually a new shade. This doesn't exist in her individual collection of products. And the highlighter is in the same formula as Golden Nectar and Golden Moonlight. It's a beautiful smooth texture. Let me give you a swatch right here. The bronzer is really nothing special, but this is again a very useful palette. Oops, the highlighter is here. This is again a really useful palette for when I travel. I took this with me on summer holiday because I knew that once I get a bit of a tan, this is going to be a beautiful color story for my cheekies. Absolutely lovely. And last but certainly not least, this is the newest addition to my face palette collection. Finally, I have gotten one of the famous Hourglass holiday palettes. I've never gotten one before. Evil Eye is my very first one. And what can I say? I have been familiar with the ambient lighting powder and like the powder bronzer blush formula of Hourglass because I've had products from them before in a single form, but I've never really been able to choose a palette because I never could find the perfect palette. In terms of like the balance in the ratio of the different types of face products, I think this one is probably one of the most optimal personally for me, because there's only one ambient lighting powder and there's only one bronzer, and there are 3 blush shades and a highlighter. Now, the only criticism I have for this specific palette is that, just like with all the other palettes, for whatever reason, Hourglass tends to put colors in here that are very similar. So these 2 shades, for example, on my cheeks, they look rather similar. I think on someone with a deeper skin tone, which also this palette is meant for, maybe they're not going to look as similar, but unfortunately on my skin applied with a light hand, they look rather similar to each other. I'm just going to quickly do the swatches right here on the back of my hand. So here are the blushes. I've actually done not a review, but like a demo of this palette recently, so I'm not going to go too in-depth into that. I'm just going to link a card for you so that you can watch the video. But the thing that I absolutely freaking love in this palette is the highlighter. The highlighter is the most gorgeous shade of rose gold. It is just perfect. Look what a gorgeous undertone of rose gold this is. I think the highlighter might be my favorite thing about this palette. I like all the rest of the powders in here, and I think this is going to be really, really handy again for traveling. And I do really love this formula. This is one of the most flattering formulas you're ever going to put on your face. However, you know, there's always just something that's not quite perfect with these palettes. There's always like one powder at least that I would like to be in a slightly different tone or color. But with that said, these are beautiful and I freaking love the highlighter. And this is the plastic IKEA insert in which I house my individual cream, liquid and powder blushes, and we can quickly go through that. I don't think I'm going to declutter any of these, but if spontaneously I decide that something needs to go, then we can discuss it. Shall we put it that way? Okay, let's start with creams and liquids, because I think that's well, actually I've accumulated quite a lot of those as well. I was going to say that's the smallest portion, but actually not anymore. I've gone a little bit crazy buying liquids and creams. Okay, let's start with the few actual like liquid products that I have, and those would be these 3. You might recognize the 2 blushes here because I showed the highlighters like really quickly the other day when I was showing my highlighters, because they come from the same set. That they're from this Daniel Sandler set that I bought with the watercolor liquid blushes and highlighters, and I absolutely love these, so I would be really, really sad if I have to throw them away. Now I have to say I didn't see anything weird floating in the blushes, at least not at first glance. The only thing I can see floating around in here is the pigment. It might as well be that with the highlighters is the same thing, because they don't actually smell, so I might eventually just put them back, but I'm still investigating. And I also have this beautiful liquid blush from Suku from quite a few summers ago that in fact is as you can see, there's quite a little bit left over here from it. I think I might actually pan this over the summer, or at least decide to call it quits after the summer, because this is rather old. The 2 products from Daniel Sandler are this like beautiful watercolor formula. They're very easy to work with and they look super flattering on the skin. I don't use the pink one all that often because pink blush really isn't all that much my jam, but the peach one is gorgeous and they look so incredibly stunning on the skin. I don't think people really talk a lot about this because I don't think Daniel Sandler is a known makeup artist or a known brand, but if you are looking for a really solid formula of liquid blushes, I highly recommend these. These are gorgeous. And the one from Suku is an entirely different formula. It's more like that thicker like gel texture. You can also see how different the texture looks on the skin. This is also such a beautiful flattering formula. These 2 colors are rather similar, but this is much more like on the peachy side. This is more like a peachy pink. Gorgeous. Not that on the skin they look all that different from each other, but I really love all 3 of these. And you can also mix these 2 together because that's, you know, the beauty of these products. You can mix and match. We have this random little container here, which in fact houses my Dante's Dream cream blush from Lisa Eldridge. Remember when Lisa Eldridge very quickly released and then withdrew from the market her liquid cream blushes because unfortunately the packaging was just not optimal. They became quite thick quite fast and the nozzle was too thin and they started popping on the back. Anyway, fantastic customer service. They basically refunded me for this product a year after I had bought it. Dante's Dream is exactly, you know, what my blush dreams are made of. It is a beautiful terracotta blush and I hope that she's working on optimizing the packaging because this is also a beautiful formula. And then we have my only Mario blush. This is the Makeup by Mario Soft Pop Plumping Blush Veil. That's a mouthful. In the shade Barely Blushing. Love this blush. Love the tone of this blush. This is a very emollient, like shiny formula. The color is the most beautiful, like neutral rosy shade. I love the tone of this blush. I actually like the formula as well. It's a little bit shinier than what I would usually go for, but that's why I just apply it with a very thick synthetic brush and take away a bit of that oiliness. I went to take a quick shower in the meantime. Where were we? I think we were about to swatch my Pat McGrath Labs cream blushes. I have 4 of them. I purchased 2 with the original release and I purchased 2 more with the release of the new shades this past year. So I have got these shades Sun-Kissed Seduction, Alluring Nude Peach Lotus and Divine Rose Glow. I've always been someone who absolutely hated putting stickers on their makeup, but at some point it just became impractical, okay? So I've put stickers on some of my makeup, even though I have to tell you aesthetically I absolutely hate it. Anyway, the blush formula from Pat McGrath Labs, I actually really like this. So this is Sun-Kissed Seduction, which is a gorgeous terracotta. This is the shade Alluring Nude. This is one of the new shades that she released. This is very much a Mariam shade when it comes to blush, more of like that nudie peachy pink shade. Then we've got Peach Lotus, which is a gorgeous, stunning, very vibrant for the summer. I like the formula of these as well. They're not as emollient as, for example, the Mario formula, and they stay on really well. They apply really easily. I find that, again, you can control a little bit of the shine with the tools that you use to apply them. This is also another one of the new ones. This is Divine Rose Glow. I think this one is supposed to be a little bit shinier than the rest. Maybe one could say it's a little bit shinier than the rest, but honestly, I can't really see it all that well with the naked eye. This is more of like a rosy, like neutral to cool toned rosy shade. I wanted to have something that is a little bit cooler in a cream formula for my cooler looks. And then I have 2 cream blushes, 2 of the, how are these called? These have a really cute name. The Cheeky Posh from Victoria Beckham Beauty. The packaging on this is just freaking stunning. I have the shades Playground and Fever, and the shade Fever is this absolutely gorgeous, vibrant, like watermelon coral type of shade. Really, really stunning. And Playground is the exact opposite. Playground is a very nude shade. Really, really love both of these. The formula is super nice, very easy to work with, very flattering on the skin. They last really well on the skin. You can see they're also not as shiny as the ones from Pat, for example. The ones from Pat are maybe in between the Mario formula and this formula. I would say the Lisa Eldridge and the Victoria Beckham one are more like a demi-matte finish, and the Pat McGrath Labs and Mario ones are somewhere on the spectrum of like more emollient and shiny, with the Mario one being the most emollient and also the least like long wearing one because of how emollient it is, at least on my skin. There are 2 more cream blushes that are in a different section because they just wouldn't fit in the other section, and they are these relatively old release by now. These are the Melt Cosmetics cream blush lights. I have 2 in the shades Lynx and Sundown. They are relatively similar shades, but one is just a little bit more like an orange and the other one is more of a copper. These are super nice. They have very similar feel, I think, to the Mario ones, but I think they set a little bit better. I think once you work these into the skin, they set quite nicely, and you can also see there's visible shimmer in here. It's not as visible when you put them on the skin, but you know, it really depends. If you're someone who's really bothered by shimmer in your blushes, you might not really like this. So this is the shade Lynx and this is the shade Sundown. The Sundown shade is one of my favorites because I really love those coppery tones. I've considered several times if I really wanted to keep these blushes, but I do occasionally use them. They don't smell funky. There's nothing wrong with them. In fact, they smell really nice because I think there's a little bit of a vanilla scent here going on. Yeah, if they start smelling funky, I think I will declutter them, but until that time, they're going to hang around because I do use them occasionally. The rest of the blushes that are in this little section, and actually the rest of the blushes, period, are all in powder formulas. Different types of powder formulas, different brands. So let's just go through them one by one. Starting off with another one of my Nabla skin glazing powders. I mentioned that Nabla made these in bronzer, blush and highlighter formula. I think this is originally from the highlighter formula release, but on my skin tone this shade is just a beautiful like peachy gold blush. This is in the shade Truth. Again, gorgeous baked gelée formula, so pretty. I've loved this blush, I've used it a lot. What's not to love? Look at this formula, absolutely gorgeous. Speaking of peach color blushes, here we have my one remaining Becca blush. Now I will say this, I had two Becca blushes. I had the shade that was made very popular by Jaclyn Hill like 10 years ago, well, almost 10 years ago, something with honey. Honey, I can't remember the name, something with honey. It was a beautiful nude shade, one of the most beautiful nude blushes I had in my collection, but unfortunately the packaging completely snapped, like this whole thing snapped, and the outer side had become so gunky and disgusting to the touch that I was faced with the dilemma to either remove the pan to use separately or just get rid of the whole thing. And I knew myself, I would go through the trouble of removing the pan and then I would never touch the blush again, so I thought, okay, the whole thing needs to go. I've gotten a lot of use out of it. Now this one will be really difficult though, because I not only love the color of this blush, this is the shade Tiger Lily, but it is also a blush that I was hunting for years ago when Becca was very hard to find in Europe, and my husband bought this for me from a Sephora in New York when he went there on a work trip. And what I really like about this blush is that even though it is a peach, very nicely here demonstrated when compared to Truth by Nabla, there's a lot more orange in here than there is pink. I like both of these undertones, but sometimes it's very hard to find a peach blush that has stronger orange undertones, and at the time I was so happy to have this blush in my collection. To this day the actual powder performs beautifully on the face, so I'm not going to get rid of this blush for as long as it basically lasts, because I cherish it. It was a present from my husband. I love the color, it still performs well. Let's deal with this little random thing from MAC here. This is from the Nutcracker collection from, I want to say this is from 2016. This is also not going anywhere. I absolutely love this little duo. This has a bronzer, not a bronzer. This has a highlighter and a blush in the Extra Dimension formula by MAC, and the Extra Dimension formula by MAC is a gorgeous baked gelée. It was probably one of the first baked gelée products that I ever tried, and that's when I found out how incredibly flawless that formula looks on the skin. Not to mention, these are, you know, the perfect Mariam shades. This is a terracotta blush, and this is the infamous Whisper of something. Whisper of Guilt. Beautiful. Love these. Look at the tone of this blush, look at this finish. The highlighter is gorgeous, a beautiful light champagne gold, and it still performs like I bought it yesterday, so love it. Love the packaging. This is such a fun memory from a time when I was still, you know, hunting after limited edition collections by MAC. Do you guys remember when limited edition collections by MAC were all the rage? Everyone wanted them and they were so hard to get. Yeah, I'm talking about that time. Now let's talk about my absolute favorite without a doubt, luxury blush formula on the market currently. These are my Gucci blushes. These are also something you're going to pry out of my cold dead hands, and maybe even not then. They're coming to my tomb. These are coming together with me in my tomb. I am not going to part with them. These are gorgeous. I love the packaging. I love the formula on these. These are not baked gelée. These are just a pressed powder formula, but oh my gosh, what a pressed powder formula they are. I had to put stickers on these as well, like little labels, because again, things were becoming a little bit difficult. I have 4 shades of these. I have the shades Warm Berry, Tender Apricot, my beloved Soft Red, and last but not least we have the shade Rosy Beige. I love all 4 of these so much. These just look so flawless on the skin. They're so lightweight, so silky, so non-texturizing and blurring. I absolutely love them. And the shades are also so beautiful. They're also just not like your typical shades of blush. There is always something unique to the undertone of each of these. This is a blush that I purchased this past year. This is from Hermes and it is in the shade Rose Tan. If I had not included the Lisa Eldridge Rouge Experience lipsticks, this would have made my top 10 most favorite makeup products for the year 2024, because there is just something very special about both the formula and the color of this blush. It is just like the bronzer. You dip your finger into this powder and you thought you felt silk before. No, you didn't. This is so incredibly smooth to the touch. I cannot even begin to describe it to you. It is also such a stunning shade of blush. The shade, the way they've described it, like Rose Tan, is pretty much what this blush actually also looks like on the cheeks. It is beautiful. It is that gorgeous, like blurring filter type formula, just like the bronzer. They're both very blurring on the skin, love them both, but this shade, the combination of the shade and the formula of this blush is just absolute chef's kiss. This blush I bought because Martina really likes this formula and this color. This is the shade 10 from the Armani Luminous Silk powder blushes. This is also really beautiful and silky formula. It feels very, very smooth, just like the Gucci ones, just like the Hermes ones, and it has that same like blurring quality to it. This is more of like a soft nudie peach. It's a little bit lighter in tone, as you can see, than the Hermes one, and not as, you know, warm. This has also like that tan undertone to it. This one doesn't. This is more of your classic like soft nude peach blush. This one I can only use when I'm at my palest, because otherwise it doesn't really show up on my skin, but I do quite like it. It is a nice blush. Two blushes from Chanel. Of course I had to try one of the new Joux Contrasté Intense blushes, the cream to powder formula that they released for fall 2024. I have the shade Rose Radiant. Yes, this is the shade Rose Radiant. These are such a beautiful formula too. They're very smooth. They have almost that like putty type feeling without really being putty or creamy, and this is such a unique like undertone of blush as well. Also something that I don't really have in my collection. This is a beautiful like spicy rosy shade. Just gorgeous. I love the finish of this on the skin, just like with the other, you know, higher end formulas. It has that gorgeous blurring effect on the skin. They are super easy to apply, really foolproof because they're quite buildable. You're never really in the danger of applying too much with this blush, at least I don't think so. I have one more blush from Chanel, which is in a completely different formula. It's in their classic powder formula from a limited edition collection from last year. This is from the fall collection from last year, and it is in the shade Beige et Coral. This is also a gorgeous like pumpkiny orangey coral type shade. Beautiful formula, gorgeous color. I think it was mostly the color that I was attracted to with this blush, because let me put a little bit more. I love those warm, spicy pumpkin, you know, dark orange pumpkin undertones. Just stunning. I also have 4 blushes here from Suku. Let's quickly go through them. So this is one which is in a different formula. The other 3 are all in the melting powder formula, and this is in their classic, I don't know how this is called. What's this called? The Pure Color blushes. This is the Pure Color blush in the shade 08. And I bought this because I know that Claudia and like a bunch of other people who love Suku are really into these blushes. These are also very silky to the touch, really, really beautiful texture. There's only one thing that bothers me about this blush. This portion of the blush here contains actual freaking glitter. And unfortunately, when I apply it on the cheeks, sometimes I can see the actual particles of glitter on my face, and I'm not the biggest fan. Like, there are large chunks of glitter in here. And I'm not one to really like have a problem with a shimmery blush, but actual glitter particles, no ma'am, thank you. This is actually a blush that I would consider decluttering because I don't get a lot of use out of it, but I don't really know whom I would give it to. If I could think of someone I would give it to, I would definitely pass it on. The melting powder blushes, on the other hand, I don't think I'm giving those to anybody. So this is in the color 05. This is one of the most unique shades of blush in my collection, and this formula is just so stunning. It's just as silky smooth as all these other luxury formulas. It's very similar to the one from Chanel, but the one from Chanel feels just slightly more putty. Look at how stunningly unique this is. This is a orange with a strong sandy yellowy undertone to it. I have nothing like this in my collection, and I love how this looks on my cheeks. This is not going to be a blush that looks good on everyone. I think if you have cooler undertones, you're going to look really sallow with this shade on, but on my skin tone, it is gorgeous. Love this. Then we've got one of my absolute favorite blushes from the Melting Powder Blush collection. This is in the shade 08, and it is another stunning terracotta shade. Love this blush. This is probably my most used blush from the Melting Powder Blushes by Suku, just because terracotta blushes are my weakness. And finally, I have one of those limited edition blushes that they released for the summer in the Melting Powder formula. This is also a beautiful like orange with golden sparkle in it. And now I'm wondering how similar this actually is to Tiger Lily from Becca. So let's pull out Tiger Lily again and compare that to the blush. Oh, this actually has more pink. See how interesting it is? Like, if you swatch Tiger Lily next to the one from Nabla, the one from Nabla is really pink. But if you swatch Tiger Lily next to the blush from Suku, this has so much more pink compared to the Suku one. That's so interesting, love that. And without a doubt, the formula blush that I would probably recommend to you the most if you are looking for a not affordable, but let's say not a luxury type formula that is a little bit more, you know, on the higher end but not super expensive, but still incredibly reliable. The Pat McGrath Labs formula has got your back. It looks flawless on the skin, it lasts like nobody's business. This is, you know, one of the formulas of blush that I would recommend to you the most. These to me are more like a mid-range in terms of the price, but absolutely stellar in terms of the performance. So let's quickly go through them. Starting off with a limited edition shade actually. This is the shade Nude Venus 2. This is a beautiful, beautiful blush, and it's actually a bummer that people can't buy it because it was limited edition. This is a shade that definitely I feel like could be added to the permanent range of Pat's blushes, because it is that gorgeous like rosy shade with like a hint of like a cooler duochrome to it. It's such an interesting blush. I absolutely love this color. Then I have, I think, one of those duos. This is probably my least favorite or like least used blush from Pat. This is one of those duos in the shade Paradise Glow. The reason I don't really use this much is because this is a shade of blush that I already have. Like, I bought this before knowing that in fact it contains shades of blush that I already own. So this is Paradise Venus, and this is essentially the same or like very close to Desert Orchid. And I have both of these in singles, as you're going to find out in a few minutes. So in fact, I don't really know what's the added bonus of me having this blush, besides the fact that it's Pat McGrath Labs and I find it hard to pass it on. But I actually think I should probably pass this blush on to somebody else, because I never use it, because I just always reach for the singles. So you know what, I'm going to put this one to the side, and I'm going to ask around if anyone from my friends would like to have this blush, because I'm not using it and it's essentially a duplicate of shades that I already have. I thought I would use this for traveling, but I use my palettes for traveling, so this does not have any place in my collection. This is going to be passed along. Great. We even are decluttering. What do you know? Then we are going into the section of blushes that are not going anywhere, starting off with the lightest blush shade that I have from Pat's collection. This is in the shade Flirtatious. It's also the one that shows the least use on it, because it is the kind of shade that really only fits me when I'm super pale. This is a very pale, like mauvey pink, and it doesn't really show up on me if I have any amount of tan. So now January, February is probably the best time for me to get some use out of this blush, because otherwise it just doesn't show up. But I really like it. If you have somewhat cooler tones to your skin and you are very pale, I think this is the blush shade for you. Then we have probably my favorite. Yeah, this is my favorite blush from Pat. This is the shade Desert Orchid, because it is just the perfect Mariam shade. It's a nude peachy brown. Oops. See, I didn't even see the freaking Flirtatious here. I was about to swatch Desert Orchid over top of it. That it's that pale. This is probably one of my most used blushes from Pat, because it's obviously my favorite. Look at this gorgeous shade of blush. Love it. This is, so they come in different formulas. Some of these have a bit of a pearl to them, and some of them are in her demi matte formula. None of them are like a true like matte formula. All of them have a bit of a sheen to them. But Desert Glow, for example, Desert Orchid. Desert Orchid is one that is considered to be like shimmery and has a bit of a pearl to it, pretty obviously. The next one is in fact one of the demi mattes, and it is another one of my absolute favorites. This is also a blush that I use a lot. This is the shade Nude Venus, and this is the kind of shade that I feel like fits with every look. And when I'm doing my makeup and I really don't know what kind of blush I want to go for, I will always pick Nude Venus, because Nude Venus just goes with everything. It's just the perfect flush color. Then we've got one of the shades, the other shade that I was referring to from that duo blush. This is the shade Paradise Venus, which is a gorgeous terracotta. This shade works for me a bit more when I have summer tan going on. As you can see, quite similar to this one. I mean, this one is mixed with the Desert Orchid type shade, so it's not the same shade, but they're close enough. Like on the cheeks, you're not going to be able to tell the difference, but you can also nicely see this is also in her demi matte formula, and this one definitely much more like shimmery. It has a bit of that pearl to it. This is a beautiful blush. And finally, the last blush that I have from Bed is also the one that I was the most scared to buy, because this is meant for deeper skin tones and it looks super scary. This is the shade Electric Lotus. Is this the shade Electric Lotus? No, Electric Bloom. This is the shade Electric Bloom, and that looks like such a scary, scary shade. But it is in fact one of the most flattering blushes on my skin tone. It's that bright watermelony, like reddish type undertone. It is quite similar to Soft Red from Gucci, but Gucci has a more brown, like chili tone, whereas this is much more vibrant and I don't know, this is essentially the shade of watermelon, but applied with a light hand on my cheek against my complexion. This is an absolutely gorgeous undertone of blush. I love Electric Bloom. I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we're going to see each other again in the next one, and I think the next one is going to be lipsticks. So keep your eyes peeled for that. In the meantime, thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!